When The Forgotten City released in 2021, it immediately blindsided the gaming community. The way its narrative infused themes about morality and antiquity while rewarding clever dialogue over brute strength took most reviewers by surprise. Initially released as a Skyrim mod in 2015, The Forgotten City as we know it took shape over many years and flips the familiar Bethesda questline on its head. In this video, I wanted to talk about how the game continually subverts expectations, all while juggling its expansive philosophical themes. As for spoilers, I'm not going to be discussing any big reveals. If you're someone who doesn't want anything about a game revealed at all before you play it, I might skip this video and come back later. But if you want to see what this game's about before you pick it up, hopefully this will pique your interest. The Forgotten City's premise feels like something ripped from a classic sci-fi novel. You're sent back in time to the Roman era and stumble upon a city under the spell of the Golden Rule. To ensure order, the city is cursed to be destroyed if any of its citizens commit a sin, and the whispering golden statues are just one of the signs that there's something sinister going on behind the scenes. Your task is to free the city from the Golden Rule and get back to your own time. The fact that the Forgotten City started as a Skyrim mod is more than just a fun piece of trivia. I'd argue it's vital to understanding just how far the game raises the bar for quest-based games. When I first started playing, some of the surface level details jumped out as being carryovers from a Bethesda classic. The moonlight jumping gravity, the dialogue trees, and the janky facial animations. It was easy for me to replace all of the antiquated architecture with cavernous Dwemer ruins. But as I got deeper into the game, the way it separates itself from its parent game was where I found the most enjoyment. Anyone who's attempted to 100% any modern Bethesda title knows the flow-like trance you get into as you're trying to check off all of the quest boxes. While there's enough depth in the worlds of Fallout or Elder Scrolls to immerse yourself in and roleplay in the literal sense, for most players, that gets lost when you're fast traveling from city to city trying to complete a guild's questline as fast as possible. Consequently, the substance of what NPCs are saying and how you go about solving their problems becomes less and less significant. This is where the Forgotten City's smaller scope plays to its advantage. When the game starts out, the player is advised that the Forgotten City rewards conversation and exploration, and not brute force. This clearly sets the tone that unlike similar titles, there's no way to max out an intimidation skill, and no option to choose a gunfight to get out of doing things the hard way. The only way to progress is to work within the means of the Golden Rule and a time loop to free yourself. You can't kill that tyrant who's oppressing the citizens. You can't just steal that bottle of life-saving medicine you need to complete the quest. Even a simple threat triggers the city's destruction. There is some wiggle room for breaking these rules thanks to the time loop. The game tracks how many times you complete the loop, and there is a quote-unquote perfect route for using the minimum number of loops to complete the game. But allowing players to commit these sins and loop back prevents the game from feeling suffocating. The idea that I could shoot any of these annoying people with my bow and take the loop prevented the game from feeling like all I could do was walk around and talk to people. The temptation to break the Golden Rule is always there. Another way the Forgotten City separates itself is through its dialogue options. In most Bethesda games, quest-based dialogues typically only have a few ways of going. Someone gives you a quest. If you have enough money or level and an applicable skill, you can bypass the tedious parts of that quest. If you don't, you usually have to go somewhere, fight some things, and come back for your reward. The Forgotten City asks that you make smart dialogue choices with the characters you interact with, or you'll risk getting locked out of an important conversation. For example, there's a flirty barkeep who keeps coming on to you, but if you act too into her, she won't be as forthcoming with information. If you piss her off by calling out her behavior, you're locked out of dialogue options with her until your next loop. To my knowledge, getting locked out of character dialogue does not prevent you from progressing in a questline, and it just makes things a little bit harder. But this is where the game rewards smart conversation skills. You get to know each citizen's story and disposition, and you have to play to their personality. Not every character can be won over the same way. Finally, I wanted to touch on the game's themes. I won't be delving into them because the game already does a way better job of that than I could of communicating what it's trying to say. I just wanted to highlight how much the Forgotten City breaks the mold, not just by Bethesda standards, but for games writing period. Gaming is a young medium, and while the visuals and audio of big budget games are on par with the modern film releases, games writing is not as fully developed. It's not to say there aren't plenty of talented writers working in the games industry, but I'd argue that things like gameplay limitations, budget, scope, and how many hands touch a game before it hits shelves makes it hard for writing to flourish. It's very difficult for a game story to be engaging, say something interesting, and tie into gameplay all at the same time. I'd argue that these three are what make a game's writing truly three-dimensional. The first game off the top of my head that hits all these points is Last of Us Part 2. So many people criticize the game's petty plot decisions without considering what the game is trying to say. What impressed me the most is that every player could take something different away from the story. It never screamed a lesson to the player, and it let the player decide who was right and wrong. The Forgotten City is equally three-dimensional. At its core, it's about humans surviving in a utopia where sinning means dooming your entire community. But that singular idea allows for many permutations. The Forgotten City routinely brings up the gray area of morality. What can be defined as a sin? The collective punishment of the Golden Rule is inherently a sin by modern standards, so which civilization's rules should the city abide by? The majority of characters exist to explore that gray area. There's a swindler who's charging an exorbitantly high price for a medicine he knows another citizen can't live without. Is that a sin? There's another character who's mentally impaired and he's in prison because he can't be trusted to know right from wrong. If he commits a sin without knowing, he'll doom everyone, so is it right to keep him imprisoned? Is there a correct philosophy to govern ourselves by? If not, is it defined by the individual? Why should an individual decide what's right or wrong based on how they were feeling at the time? Suffice to say, there are a lot of questions on morality that the game explores. Without spoiling it, the final showdown at the end of the game has the player come to terms with everything they've learned from the Forgotten City. It's a really smart ending and demonstrates that we don't have to have all the answers to know right from wrong. There are some other overt themes like generational trauma, colonization, and more. It would be hard to talk about them without spoiling important plot details. But my point is that a player can easily walk away from the Forgotten City with a new perspective. There's not many games that can say that. Some games have basic themes like corporations are evil, and some don't even have any messages at all. It's refreshing to play something that truly breaks the mold. And just to be clear, I don't think Bethesda games have poor writing or that they should start incorporating questlines with this much depth. Most games would be bogged down with something this intricate, but that's what makes the Forgotten City special. It's a tight experience that shows the video game medium at its best.